Welcome to The Point. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome to the first ever episode of The Point, all access sports show, brand new, with your boy, live and in the flesh, Rick, and my boy here on the other side of this screen, Haystacks. How you doing, my brother?
We are doing. What is up?
Doing well. Big weekend. Everyone knows or should know by now that The Point is XFL centric, but not only XFL, all sports, of course, as many as we can get our hands on. Busy guys. For those of you who do not know, myself and Haystacks come from the promo entertainment world. We've been around the block a time or two, a couple of years, and we've decided to move on into something that we truly love, something we're truly passionate about, which is, well, what every red-blooded American male is passionate about, and that is football, right?
Absolutely. Don't care what kind.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, let's go ahead and jump on into it. We had 4 big games this weekend. The XFL is back, and it's back in a big way. Now there was 8 teams, 4 games, and I got to tell you, the first time around the XFL was less than what's the word I'm looking for? Less than successful. Of course, they had one season, everything went okay. They had a lot of snafus and stuff like that, but I think the first time around, Vince McMahon tried to mesh football with wrestling, and I think we can all speak for, me and you both can speak for most of the country when we say, obviously myself and Haystacks here are wrestling fans, or wrestling marks, if you will, but when we watch wrestling, we want to watch wrestling. When we watch football, we want to watch football. We don't want to see the two intertwined, and I can understand Vince McMahon's vision, but it just didn't work for TV. You can't mix reality and gimmick. And I think when you do that, the closest thing that ever happened to that obviously was the NWO in the wrestling world. But when you're trying to mix a sport that's not pre-planned versus an organized and orchestrated sports entertainment show, it just doesn't work. So this time around,
and also the first go around, they tried to go toward arena football. And I think that turned a lot of fans off too. Arena football is nowhere near as exciting. The field was a whole lot shorter, if you remember. I think they were playing on, what was it, a 75-yard field or something like that?
A little different. Yeah, a little different. See, I wasn't a big fan of the first go around. I didn't watch a lot of the first go around because, honest to God, it just didn't appeal to me. Now, while wrestling has always appealed to me, the epic battle of good versus evil, in the football world, that may be the same kind of concept. You know, you make, good guy, bad guy, team you're pulling for, team you want to lose, which is basically any team playing against your team. But at the same time, that gimmicky, that world, it just didn't work for me. So I will say this, jumping on in here, we had 2 former Alabama players debut this weekend, Savion Smith for the Roughnecks, and of course, another cornerback, Bradley Silv for DC Defenders. And I got to say this, before I say anything else, I'm going to go ahead and say right here, right now, your boy Rick is a DC Defenders fan for life. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm also going to give a big shout out to Vince McMahon and the XFL for having the balls right off the jump to put public safety, public service front and center, something the NFL hasn't had the balls to do. Police, EMS, fire, all over the screen, showing their appreciation. I understand the concept of DC Defenders and all of that, but you know as well as I do, Haystacks, that they didn't have to do that, and they did. And that takes balls.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it live, but I did go back and watch it. Huge statement by the XFL, especially in today's world. Absolutely a ballsy statement to be made.
And it should be a lesson learned by Roger Goodell and the NFL, because you know how much blowback they've gotten from it?
Goose egg.
Time to grow up, NFL. Roger Goodell, I hope you're listening. I hope you're watching. I hope you're paying attention because I know for a damn fact a lot of your employees are because they were there in person over this weekend watching these games. Now, moving on. Our first game comes up. We got the Seattle Dragons taking on the DC Defenders, Audi Field in DC. Now, this game for me, this was a big game. This is their first ever game of the reimagined XFL. This game, in my mind, or I can imagine in Vince McMahon's mind, had to be perfect. And I think for anybody watching, if they're being honest with themselves, it was less than perfect.
And that's being greatly considerate. Honestly, that game was horrible. There was a lot going on in that game to where it was very hard to focus on the gameplay itself.
True story. I understand the concept of wanting the communication between the coaches and the players. I understand the more fan-centric experience for the XFL. The one thing that I found confusing and distracting from the game of football itself was there were so many people talking at one time that I found it hard to concentrate on the commentators. And I almost felt like there was no point in having commentators because they didn't have a chance to really speak unless they were speaking not only over each other, but over everything else that was going on. Because you had defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, the coaches, and you had the one thing I know I've seen in the media that everyone seems to love apparently is the fact that when a kicker misses a field goal, the reporter can hit them as soon as they hit the sideline, shove a mic in their face, and the fans apparently, I guess I disagree with a lot of the fans because emotions run high. And I know it's a unique concept, and this is where the WWE kind of leaks into the XFL still just a little bit because in the WWE, straight after a match, I'm sure you've noticed they've started shoving mics in the superstar's face after a big win or after a big loss, depending on what the storyline calls for. And of course, it's scripted. They know what to say. They know how to say it. And some of it may be off the top of their head. It may be from passion and this, that, and the other, but they know how to check themselves. These are professional athletes. They're not used to scripted content. And what happened? Almost off the rip, a flag is thrown. The guy hits the sidelines, a microphone shoved in his face, and he right off the bat drops a major F-bomb. And I can almost promise you ABC and Vince McMahon are having a big phone call, a big conversation. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. Now, look, I know mistakes are going to happen, but this is the risk you run on live TV of when something's not scripted. And I think that's kind of an oversight, if I'm being honest and being generous about that comment. I think it's an oversight by Vince McMahon. What are your thoughts?
You know, as far as the quarterback, the coaches all being mic'd up where you could hear it, not a fan. I'm not one of those people that I need to hear every single play that's being ran, especially when I don't have a playbook in front of me. It's useless information, and it takes away from my viewing of the game. If I did have a playbook, it would still be kind of boring because then I'd be sitting here, I would be looking at the playbook and going, well, they're going to do a sweep to the right. What's the point in even watching?
Right.
That's the stupid part of it that I'm not a fan of. As far as the sideline interviews, I like the concept myself because you do allow for the passion of the game to kind of come through. We had this conversation before in private about Joe Horn. That's why I can't stand the NFL. They took away celebrations.
Right.
I'm a fan. If I'm going to a game and I'm spending, $60 for a ticket, I'm spending $12 for a hot dog, $8 for a beer. I'm not there to see some guy catch a touchdown pass, hold his head down, hand the ball to the referee, and go sit on the bench. I want to see some crazy stuff happen. I want to see a dude go to his opponent. They're at their opponent's field. I want to see him go and hike his leg on their logo in the middle of the field. That's why I'm there, to be entertained. Okay. But at the same time, like you said, I think in that first game, I know I heard at least 4 F-bombs.
Yeah.
From different people being mic'd up.
Oh yeah. And what I noticed too was the whoever was trying to catch those words, trying to edit or censor those words, were just running a little bit behind.
Yeah, they were failing miserably at their post.
Right. Well, beyond that, the one thing I will say is I do like the fact that offensive and defensive coordinators and head coach do have contact with the team throughout the play. The wide receiver and the what's the word I'm looking for? The skilled positions, as they say. They're all skilled in my mind, but wide receivers, quarterback, thing like that. And then on the defense, they also have contact with parts of the defense throughout the entire play, which I think is cool because there's a lot of things that happen in fast motion. And I know some would argue that, well, even he's cutting left. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean the middle linebacker is going to be able to get to that spot and get to it fast. But I still like the point of being able to, between them only, be able to reach out to them. I'll tell you something else I like real quick, and I know we got to get into it because we're running low on time. But I like the fact that it's college rules as far as a catch goes. 1 foot in bounds. No bullshit. No force outs. No toe tapping. 1 foot in bounds, the ball in hand, and it's a catch. And I think it's time we get back to that in professional football because it's gotten out of control. We've all seen what happens when you try to dig too much into it. And I can go back to the Dez Bryant catch. I believe it was versus Green Bay, where he obviously caught the football. The ball never hit the ground. It was a touchdown. I'm not going to get into it, but they said it wasn't a catch because he never controlled the ball. I mean, what kind of shit is that? So I think this XFL is aiming to not only innovate but simplify the game, and I think that's why it's taken off. I really do. So here we go. Seattle Dragons taking on the DC Defenders, Audi Field in DC. We got Brandon Silvers, quarterback for the Dragons, and we have, of course, the big name, Cardale Jones with the Defenders. And I got to tell you, right out the gate, as soon as the game started, before they ever really got started good, Cardale Jones was getting chance of MVP from the home field of, in Audi Field. And I got to tell you, I know it's a hair trigger here when I say this, but he looked like an MVP. I've never seen him play that well. In fact, now I know this is no slight on anybody in the XFL, and this isn't kissing the NFL's ass, but this is a slightly different level of playing field, right? Let's be honest. But he played his ass off. He really did. Now, he didn't have a spectacular game by any stretch of the imagination, but he had a damn good game, and he had it early.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually just looking at his numbers. Pretty stout numbers for Cardale. Everybody knows I'm from Columbus, Ohio. So anything to do with the Ohio State Buckeyes, unfortunately, I have to hear because I have no choice if I watch the news or if I read the local newspaper. Right. But for Cardale to go out there, first game in a brand new league and put on a show like this is outstanding. 116.7 QB rating.
Yes, sir.
That is insane.
Well, it was an insane game to watch. I mean, I really had a lot of fun watching Cardale. I tell you who he reminded me of. He reminded me of a 2015 Cam Newton.
Yeah.
That's what he reminded me of. Now, I may be overstepping a little bit, maybe being a little eccentric when I say that, but that's who he reminded me of. I almost forgot that I was watching the XFL for a second, and I found myself feeling that way a lot this weekend. Because I will say this real quick, from the beginning of this weekend to the end of this weekend, I saw the XFL evolve and evolve fast.
Very, very fast.
That's hard to do in 2 days. So
Yes.
bravo to everyone involved. Now, both of these teams, we know they both have quarterback centric coaches. What I mean by that, obviously, for the layperson and people who don't know what I'm talking about, is both of these quarterbacks for both of these teams love, love, love quarterbacks. You know, they
Yes.
build their team, they build their offense around quarterbacks. You have Jim Zorn with Seattle, of course, spent time with the Redskins. And then you have Pep Hamilton, of course, who has a plethora of knowledge throughout the NFL. Both of them love quarterbacks. And I think I got to, obviously the defenders ended up winning the game, but not just because of the win. I got to give the edge to Pep Hamilton, man. I think, if I'm being honest, I think Pep outcoached Jim Zorn by a mile, and obviously the defenders outplayed the Dragons by a mile, at least in my opinion. What's your take on that?
It's really too early for me to tell. I agree for what you're saying from what we've seen so far. But what I'm going to be curious about is once we see this offense. Obviously, they're a strong offense. Put up 31 points.
Right.
What are they going to do against a New York team that kept Tampa Bay to 3 points? What are they going to do to a St. Louis team that kept probably the number one offensive head coach and the innovator of the air raid offense? They kept them down to 9 points. What's going to happen? Are they this good, or is Seattle that bad?
Well, I mean, I guess we're going to find out.
That's where I'm hesitant to really say who's really that good, who's really that bad at this point, because honestly, we don't know. Is DC really that good, or is Seattle really that bad?
Well, part of me feels like Seattle's just that bad, and the other half of me wants to believe in the DC Defenders because I'm all in on the Defenders. I'm all
Right.
in. I like their style of play. They remind me of again. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but everybody knows I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. They reminded me of the 2015 Panthers, which may or may not be a good thing. A lot of the things they did reminded me of the Panthers that year and several other years. The defense was not that bad. It's going to need a little work. But one of the things that surprised me or that stood out for me that I was not aware of was Austin Prohl playing for the Seattle Dragons. I was unaware that he was even on the team. And my man went for, he had 5 receptions for 88 yards. So he had almost 100 yards in that game, and he had 2 touchdowns. If I'm reading, 2 touchdowns. So the lineage lives on. The lineage lives on.
Those stats, man. There was really no defense played in this game from what I can see. Both teams only had 1 sack, so they're not getting through the line to get to the quarterback at all. Whether that's credit to the line, whether that's credit to – I know Cardell Jones is a very elusive quarterback, but who does that credit go to? We'll never know. Tackles for loss. You've got Seattle sitting here with 8 tackles for loss to where you have 4 from DC. DC did pull down 2 interceptions, so that's pretty stout.
True. You talking about Cardell being elusive. I mean, he had what I'm seeing here, he had 9. Let's see. Let me see what I'm looking at here. He ran 9 times for 28 yards, so he's only averaging a little over 3 yards a carry. So again, kind of reminds me of Cam.
Yeah.
I know. Here's the thing: these offensive and defensive lines are most certainly going to get better throughout the season.
Yes.
But we all know how hard it is to find a good, cohesive unit, both offensive and defensive. And I feel like even with the player, the talent level, maybe again not quite meeting the NFL's level, and it shouldn't. It's a different breed. But this was the first game of the season for both of these teams, and I think they both did surprisingly well. Nothing against Jim Zorn, but I think his history kind of speaks for itself as far as his coaching talent. And I'm not taking nothing away from him, but I don't want to jump the gun. Okay, let's just say, I guess time will tell. We get 3, 4, 5. You get halfway through this season, and Jim Zorn may or may not necessarily be proving himself at that point. I don't know, and I can't really say that Jim Zorn is in the position he needs to be in. I mean, we all seen what he did with the Redskins. It was not that glorious. It didn't last long for a reason. But that being said, there's a reason Pep Hamilton is in the XFL as well. So, but at this level, uh, Jim Zorn's Dragons, Jim Zorn, his team and himself were both outplayed and outcoached. And I think if they don't get it together in the next game or two, they're going to be in real trouble.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Let's not forget also that game, which was on ABC, drew in 3.3 million people to watch.
4 million at its peak. Yeah, I saw that.
Now, let's compare that. Let's compare that. Not exactly fair, but let's compare that to the Super Bowl of this year, which was 85.25 million people.
Ooh.
That's the Super Bowl, though. Not. This is what, the 54th Super Bowl?
And it's been around a minute.
Not some rookie season that's already had one failure under its belt.
Yeah.
To go in and have almost at your peak 4 million people right off the rip. Your very first game coming in with doubts from a previous failure. That's a pretty stout start.
Now, I know this is comparing apples to oranges, but that's a lot better than AEW did in its debut against NXT. So, kudos to XFL, kudos to Vince and everybody else involved, Mr. Luck, everybody that was involved in this. But I will say Luck or North, I can't remember the guy's name on the top of my head. Sue me. Real quick, a couple of things I wanted to touch on. One thing about the ratings you were talking about that surprised me was that the highest market for that game was in Seattle, man.
Yeah.
I do understand that. I do understand that because there's a lot of Seahawks fans. Football's big out there. But man, the Redskins have been sold out for what is it? Years and years and years and years. I mean, that blew my mind. I just thought for sure that the Defenders, if anybody, would have had to higher the 2 ratings. But anyway, moving on. I know we're at the 25-minute mark. We got to roll on. So I hate to cut it short, but I will say this before we move on to the Wildcats and the Roughnecks. I was surprised to learn, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, that each team that wins gets $100,000 to split with their players, or split with the team. Now, I'm not sure how that's split, but if you split that with 100 people, you're talking $1,000. So
right.
I'm not sure how that's split, but I thought that was a hell of an incentive
Correct. Yeah, I was kind of curious about that myself, and I don't have the math in front of me, but I can very quickly, I hope, to see what that would actually break down to.
For how many people?
Yeah, how many? So you're going to have a roster size of 52 to 57 players.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go ahead and do that math at 57 players, just because that's the high point. That was $100,000.
Yeah.
So you're looking at $1,754.39 just to win a game, on top of your regular contract.
Not a bad chunk of change. I mean, considering these guys are making $55,000 a year for putting their health on the line, generally, that's pretty hardcore. But let's be honest. Basically, I mean, what they're doing for the most part, there's some of them are living out their dreams. The majority of them are trying to try out for the NFL. They either get there or get back there. So 55,000 ain't so bad after all. And that little chunk of change for winning a ball game.
Speaking of which, they're out there putting their health on the line. One thing I will say that I am a fan of from what I've seen is we're actually able to hit people in football again.
Brother, let me tell you something. I'm excited. I'm excited about that, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. I'm excited to see the big hits again. I'm excited to see the hard-hitting action again. But the downside of that, the NFL, WWE, we can go on. And I mentioned WWE because, again, Vince McMahon owns the XFL. All about concussion protocol, all about player safety, sports entertainer safety. I saw at least 2 hits this weekend. And when I say they were not stupid, I saw one, the last one I watched, I think the last game yesterday, between, I want to say it was LA and Roughnecks. The guy was hit so hard. He was the defender. He hit the guy so hard, he landed face first out cold, or at least it appeared that way. I'm not a doctor, wasn't there. He jumped up to his hands and knees, jumped up to his feet, and jogged to the center of the field towards the end zone. Had no clue where he was. And I watched the referee like, oh shit. He walks over to him and like grabs him and starts walking him off the field. He didn't know where he was, man. Now, there's a fine line. This goes back to the catch rule in the NFL. There's a fine line. Of course, a catch, not a catch. Nobody's life is on the line. Nobody's health is on the line. But again, as far as the rule goes and as far as, officiating goes and what you can do and what you can't do, this goes back to that catch rule, because what is the line? Now, they have defined, much like the NFL, targeting, things like that. But if you're going to allow these harder hits, you have to make sure they're legit. And I saw a lot of helmet-to-helmet, a lot of face-to-face tackles. I did see some targeting calls that did come in. But, man, where's that line at, Haystacks? Where's that line?
Here's my line, personally. Helmet to helmet is a no-no everywhere, period. Blindside shots, especially to the quarterback in a defenseless state, no-no. Face mask pull. I'm not so concerned with hands to the face, because, I mean, unless you're going to take a dude and put your leg behind his and pie face him to the ground, I'm cool with hands to the face. But if you're going to grab a dude's face mask and try to turn his head to his ass, I got a problem with that.
Agreed.
It goes back to in my opinion, of course, because again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a regular guy that played football back in the glory days and have been hit in the head more times than I probably want to remember. It goes back to people need to toughen up, in my opinion, man.
I will say this. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'll say this. It doesn't seem as if players are built like they used to be. Now, I know, the NFL, when they did the whole CBA and they cut out a lot of early season stuff, a lot of practices, a lot of padded practices, a lot of OTAs. Man, they cut out a lot of shit that, before, back in the old days, it was, what me and you were used to watching and even playing, you know, they were more conditioned. Now, I mean, you can work out all you want to. You heard several of the players when they were interviewed coming to the sidelines. What did they say? They're like, okay, we'll give you a second to catch your breath. And they're like, I heard two or three of them say, I'm in the best shape of my life, but I hadn't played football in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
There's a big damn difference between being in shape, no matter what position you're playing, and being in football shape.
I think what the NFL and the XFL, and even the NBA, I think what all of these sports need to do, hockey, all these impact sports, what they need to do is they need to actually do an apples to apples study. Take a guy like, for instance, Troy Aikman, that his career was ended due to concussions, and compare him to a Tom Brady that still had the same lengthy career. And how many times have we heard of Tom Brady sitting out for a concussion?
Yeah, that's a true story.
Compare those two and look at nutrition, look at workout regimen, look at, DNA, look at physics. Why is it that quarterback number one can play 12 years and have his career ended with 6 concussions, to where quarterback B can play 12 years, the same length, same game, and have 1 concussion? There's something physiologically there. It's not just changing rules around to make these guys softer. There's something there that it's something to do with the physiology of the people, that one dude's softer than the next.
Hey, everyone knows I shouldn't say I'm not a fan of Tom Brady. I respect the guy for his talent, but let's not discount the offensive lines that he's played behind. And Dallas had some good offensive lines, but they weren't that damn good. But that has a lot to do with it as well. But Tom Brady, I give man credit where it's due. He's in great shape. He takes very good care of himself. Drinks a shit ton of water. Anybody else would friggin' die from drinking the water he drinks. But anyway, at the 33-minute mark, let's jump into the Wildcats and the Roughnecks. Man, for lack of a better word, the Wildcats got that ass whooped.
Yeah, smoked.
A 20-point romping that's an ass whoop. I don't know how else to say it. Houston struck quick with a TD right off the bat. It was insane. I did watch that game. I watched the majority of it. I really enjoyed watching Elijah Hood, the running back for the Wildcats. He's like a bowling ball, and of course I love that. Big fan of running backs, but the game to me didn't feel like it was that one-sided. Watching the game, it felt like, and it really wasn't one-sided until later on. But the statistics, I'm looking at them now. Hood, he only had 43 rushing yards, nothing impressive. I think the one thing that stood out for me, and if I'm being completely honest, and call me cynical, the quarterback, I never heard of this guy for the Wildcats, Knopf. This guy, I'm just going to put it out there, he's a whiner, man. I saw him because of all the microphones on the field. He complained and whined with his coaches every chance he got. He just seemed like he was too immature for the pro game, man. I don't know if I'm out of place for saying that, but let's see what he had here. He had one TD, one interception, 53% completion percentage, and 21 of 40. He had 214 yards, which is okay, but 214 yards is 17 points versus what do we got over here? Walker, 23 of 39, 59% completion percentage, 272 yards, but 37 points. It's a big damn difference.
Well, I can tell you from what I can see here with this Chad Knopf, we can see 3 reasons, and this is going to piss some people off, and I'm okay with that. Send me the hate mail, not Rick. Number 1, the kid was born in 1994, so he's a millennial. So he was born in the being a whiner to begin with. Then he goes to high school at Harvard Westlake School in Los Angeles, to where then he goes to college at Princeton.
God bless his heart.
So then he goes undrafted to the Cardinals, who cut him in 20. Again, they undrafted him, signed him in 2018. He gets cut 2019. He goes from the Detroit Lions to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, only on an off-season practice squad contract, and then turns around in 2020. He's signed by the New York Guardians and is cut again to go to the Los Angeles Wildcats.
Wonder why. Just putting it out there.
I think that there's a little bit too much of this instead of shutting up and playing the damn game.
Hey, you're not going to get any argument.
Hey, send me the hate mail. The point is what at gmail.com. If you don't like it, send them my way. I'll gladly put them here live and answer your questions. You don't like my opinions? Welcome to America.
Haystacks, ladies and gentlemen. Point is what at gmail.com at the bottom of your screen right here, right now. Now, a couple other takeaways from this Houston-LA game. There was a lot of big stops, man. I know Houston, my man Lyons, he had a big stop on the 3rd down that really prevented things from going on. Houston seemed to me to show up at the big moments when it mattered, on those crucial 3rd downs and things of that nature. You can the Roughnecks had a roughneck feel. It felt like they were the big boys on the field. And the Wildcats were really just trying to find their way, for lack of a better word. And again, I think this all centers around, the coaches and the quarterbacks, the leaders of the team, so to speak. And I just don't think Knopf is a leader. I just don't. Walker, man. If I'm being completely honest with you, Walker was the standout of the XFL for this entire first round weekend. Walker was a beast, man. He looked like a combination of Russell Wilson and Drew Brees, man. The guy was all over the place. He was running, he was passing, he was efficient. Like I said, he was, relatively efficient. 59% completion percentage in a first game of the season with a new offense and all that. It's pretty damn impressive. And he also had, I'm looking right here, he also had 4 runs for 26 yards, 6.5 yards a carry. That's better than most running backs. But Walker most definitely, for me, was the MVP of this entire weekend.
Yeah, so, to go in there and be responsible for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, most NFL quarterbacks would kill for a game like that.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something right now. I got some notes here that I took. LA muffed a punt reception at one point, and excuse me for not writing down the timestamp. But, and I'm gonna say this, and I'll let you retort before we take a break. One thing that I noticed throughout this entire first weekend of the XFL was I'm not sure, I haven't held one of the XFL's game balls, but something's not right. I don't know what it is. I know there was a lot of nerves this weekend. However, there were a lot of muffed punt and kickoff receptions by some very, very talented individuals. And understand, they're not under the same pressure that, say, an NFL punt returner or kick returner would be, because the kickoff rules are different. Now, the punts, of course, are the same, but on kickoffs, there's really no excuse for eyes downfield while you're trying to catch the ball, kind of thing. And I can tell you right here, right now, I saw numerous receptions bouncing off a face mask, eyes on dead on the ball, and the ball hitting their chest and bouncing. So I don't know if the balls are more inflated, different material. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but that is one thing I noticed right off the jump. My first takeaway from the entire weekend, other than it was an absolutely badass weekend, great weekend, successful weekend for the XFL. What's your thoughts?
That's what I'm looking up right now. What the differences exactly are. I apologize for not having this up right now, but
No problem. By the way, while you're looking for that, LA's the Wildcats Dixon, he was the one that I was talking about. That he was a tough hit. He's a defender, and he was out cold and got up and jogged towards the end zone and all that. That was the one. There was also two really bad no calls on pass interference on LA. Really, really bad calls. And again, I don't want to be like most people, take my frustrations out on the referees, but there was some shitty calls, and I know there's nerves working there for them just as well as there is for everybody else. So I won't beat them up too bad, but everybody likes to blame the ref.
they're saying that the XFL ball isn't too incredibly different from a classic football. Same size, same weight. The only difference is each football has a color scheme and logo that pertains to the team that they can use.
Absolutely.
The only difference is there are X's on the ends of the football that's supposed to help the receivers see the ball easier, and they'll make the spirals look cinematic when they soar through the air. And they have this new technology which is called X Pebble grip rather than the normal. Now I don't know if that X Pebble grip might be giving these guys a little bit, if it's gripping their foot when it comes off the foot, a little bit different than a regulation football.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's so much the kick as it is reception, because the ones muffing it are the ones receiving. But you have to think this day and time with the gloves and the technology. I mean, some of these guys could be absolutely out cold, and the ball hit their hand and they'd catch it because these gloves are insane. Um, but you have to think, if the ball's coming in and I'm pursed up to receive it, and I know these guys are coming, and it just nicks my finger, even the slightest little bit with the traction on them gloves, man, with the speed that ball's coming from being kicked, having the shit kicked out of it. I don't know. Yeah, that may be something the XFL has to revisit in season two, because I truly believe there will be a season two. But that being said, we're going to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. Again, this is your boy Rick and Haystacks with The Point. See you back in just a second.
Join us next week for episode 2.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on The Point again. Just as you just seen, do not forget, next Tuesday night, we'll be right back in the same place, give or take a few hours, but we'll be here nonetheless. We promise you this: when we tell you we'll be here, we'll be here. Just saying. So now we're moving on. You're halfway through the show, and now we're talking about what I thought was surprising as shit. The Tampa Bay Vipers and the Guardians. which, by the way, I'm going to give a shout out to the Guardians on their damn uniforms. Love, love, love their uniforms. But Tampa Bay Vipers, being a little bit closer to where I'm at here in North Carolina, I kind of had my eyes on the Vipers. And I thought they were going to do well. I looked at their team. I looked at who they had. You saw a fast break earlier this week about Murray being named the starter and everything. Man, I'm not impressed at all. Murray went 16 to 34, 47%. He had 237 yards. But my man threw 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. It was a tough break for my man this week. It was a tough break. Now, I know you know more about Murray than I do. But knowing what I knew about him, I kind of expected him to be okay. Maybe it was just nerves. I don't know. But McGloin, man. McGloin for the Guardians, 52% completion percentage, only had 182 yards. But he had a touchdown, no interceptions, and, and a rating of 82.8 versus 45.1 for Murray.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because if you look at the box score on that, Tampa Bay, they looked like the more rounded team.
Absolutely. Now
they did fairly well in rushing. They had one rusher go for over 70 yards. Another one was right at the 40 mark. Murray, almost 250 yards passing. Those 2 picks, and then their backup didn't look too much better either. He was 50% for a 37-yard throw.
Oh, yeah. One throw. And, although it may have been for 37 yards, one of the notes I got here is that, the stats most definitely show the Vipers having the advantage.
Yeah.
I think this game came down to defense. I know I'm looking here. I see at least 1 pick six in my notes.
Yes.
And here's the kicker for me. In the NFL or anywhere else in the football world, I don't know if the football gods were just shining down on the Guardians today or what it was. But usually when a team is more efficient than the other on third down, they're the team that walks out the victor. And that just wasn't the case today. The Vipers were way more efficient on third down, but they still got that ass whooped.
Yeah.
So today, maybe today was a little bit of I don't know, maybe the northern lights are shining. Maybe the stars were aligned. I don't know. I can't really say one way or the other how I feel about the Vipers and the Guardians going forward, other than to say McGloin, he seems like a solid-ass quarterback. A little short for a quarterback in a pro league, but not taking anything away from him because, hell, I'm sure he's bigger than I am. But still, on a pro football level, I feel like he's a hell of a lot more solid than Murray. Now, I know Murray's young. He's got time to grow. And I'm sure in that system, as things go along, hey, not everybody can be a badass right out of the gate. So what are your thoughts on the quarterback situation?
It's kind of a scary thing, man. This kid, he's a product of Georgia. You look at guys like Fromm and I can't remember the kid's name from Ohio State that transferred. They're a quarterback school. This kid went in the 5th round in the 2014 draft to the Kansas City Chiefs, nonetheless. Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs, mind you.
Right.
And then from there, this kid just took a nosedive, man. Spent 2 seasons with the Chiefs. Then he went 2016. He was with the Cardinals and the Eagles. Barely made their practice squad. And then 2017 made the practice squad with the Rams. 2019 he went, I'm assuming this is probably the what is it, AAF
Was, yeah.
was. He was there with Atlanta, and now he's here. So, I mean, to be a top 5 round pick, the 163rd pick overall, to fall from grace that quickly, eesh.
Well, what I've always been told, and I know all my coaches that I ever had told me, everything I've ever heard, college football, pro football, red zone efficiency is really where I can't stress this enough, because in the red zone, as well as I do, playing football yourself, that goal line is like another defender, man. I mean, things get a hell of a lot tighter and a hell of a lot more compact and a hell of a lot harder, obviously, for obvious reasons. But tonight, I think the deciding factor and the reason why, other than the pick sixes, is why the Guardians took it home is because they were 2 for 2 in the red zone. Where let me see here, Tampa Bay was 0 of 4, 0% in the red zone. Which, I mean, I'm sorry, when you're 0% in the red zone and your opponent's 100% in the red zone, I think that about sums it up.
The shocking part about all that is if you look at his collegiate career, this is a kid that currently leads the SEC in career touchdowns over, mind you, a guy named Peyton and Eli Manning. Don't know if anybody's ever heard of those two.
Never heard of them.
And Matt Stafford. So this kid knows how to throw the ball. He knows how to score touchdowns.
Right.
What happened? There's no excuse at this point. When you walk in with a resume like that, there's no excuse.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think the stars. I'll give you credit for that one. The stars of this game, other than Matt McGloin, I'm not sure what his first name is. Mr. McGloin is number 81, Williams for Tampa Bay. He had 6 receptions for 123 yards with an average 20 and a half yards per catch, which is not bad at all. And of course, rushing, well, I guess it's really nothing to brag about, but their top rusher was Mr. Victor, number 27, 9 attempts, 32 yards, average of 3.6 yards per carry. An average day, a subpar day to say the best, but to say the least. But the receiving end on the Guardian side was McKay. He had 58 yards, 3 receptions, so he averaged a little over 19 yards a reception. Nonetheless, the Guardians walk out with the victory in a very familiar stadium. And again, some truly badass uniforms. But nonetheless, moving on, do you have any final points for that game before we move on to the Battlehawks and Renegades?
Just up to this point so far, you can definitely tell there's not much of a use for running the frickin' football.
Yeah, you have to wonder, is that by design? Is that something that's been, less? Because, you always hear the kids, right? You got kids, I've got kids, and you always hear the children, they're watching the game, and they're like, why do they keep running the ball up the middle? They're never going to get anywhere. And then all of a sudden, boom, through the line they go. Boom, 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 boom. And you're like, that's why. And not only that, you see them, the first, second down run plays, and you're like, ah. And then the third down, of course, everybody's expecting run, pass. They take a shot. And
you run the ball, it wears down the defense. You keep crashing into the defense to set up your long play or to set up catching your linebackers asleep and try to hit a slant right down the middle to try to get your receiver a big chunky yards. And nobody, up to this point, nobody is using the run whatsoever as far as I can see.
Old school smash mouth football. It's what people love. Now, look, we love the exciting plays too. I mean, don't get me wrong. We love the deep ball. We love the Hail Marys that actually connect. We live for those magical moments. But those magical moments don't happen without running the football first and laying that foundation. You have to put in the work to have the sparkle. So I guess we'll leave it there.
Up to this point at these 3 games, the highest rush was 16 attempts for 79 yards.
Wow.
That's embarrassing.
Wow. So we move on. We hit on that.
Do we got to move on to this game?
Yes, we do. We move on down to a little itty-bitty state on the map that most people have never heard of before. It's called Texas, right? And there's this town in Texas that you probably never heard of before. They don't know a whole lot about football down there, called Dallas. So we see the Battlehawks from St. Louis taking on I'm being funny, obviously. We're taking on the Dallas Renegades. Biggest football town, as far as I'm concerned, in the United States, home of America's team, quote unquote. And here we go. We got a guy who's never played pro football a day in his life quarterbacking the Battlehawks, and Te'amu. I hope I'm saying his name right. Taking on a quarterback named Nelson, who I've never heard of before a day in my life. No offense to Nelson and the Dallas Renegades. Now, going into this game, Dallas was the favorites, right?
Yes.
The over-under had Dallas winning almost by a mile, it seemed, because of who their coach is. Go ahead, and I'll let you speak on this. You know all about the coach. You know all about that kind of stuff, so let's hear it.
Coach Bob Stoops, man, he's an Ohio boy. Got a start, Youngstown. Ended up being the coach of the Oklahoma Sooners in 1999. One season later, takes us and wins a national championship in his first season with a very young quarterback. After that, he spent 18 seasons with us. Numerous bowl wins, national championship appearances. Probably set up in the end of his career at Oklahoma, made us quarterback you, running back you. He set up the guys like the Baker Mayfields. He brought in the guys like Kyler Murray's. He was huge in the transfer of Jalen Hurts. Guys like Adrian Peterson. The list goes on and on and on. The guy knows how to win. He knows how to coach a football team, and he knows what he's doing as far as the staff goes. And that's why his offensive coordinator is there. His offensive coordinator is also known as the godfather of the air raid offense. The guy created the air raid offense, which Bob Stoops and now Lincoln Riley run. And since they implemented air raid, every season Oklahoma has been a juggernaut on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, let me tell you, the air raid was non-existent.
It was not.
For both teams, in fact. Matter of fact, both quarterbacks had exactly the same amount of yards. With Te'amu for the Battlehawks had 20 of 27 for 74% completion, where Nelson had 33 of 42 with a 79% completion. But they ended up with the same amount of total yards passing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this right here, right now. I Stoops, Godfather, the Air Raid. I'm familiar with all that, man. And the guys, they're absolutely insane. And I can understand how they were the favorites going in, not only in the fans' eyes and America's eyes, but also in Vegas. Um, but it just didn't pan out tonight. And I don't know what it was, but I remember hitting you up. We were actually talking at the beginning of the game, and I said, man, Dallas came to win. They came to win. But again, when it came time to score, getting the job done and breaking the ice of actually getting in the end zone, Dallas just could not pull it off. And if I can say anything, the things that stand out to me in the Battlehawks and Renegades, St. Louis and Dallas, is that this kid, number 10, Te I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you right here, right now, the MVP of this league this year, mark my words, write it down, is going to come down to between Walker, Jones, and this kid. This kid played. Go ahead.
The scary thing is that kid, this Ta'amu, or however his name, I'm butchering his name, I apologize. This kid was number 3 on their depth chart at quarterback.
Oh, man. Now, to be fair, you're only as good as the team around you. But I heard him because the mics were open. Now, again, this is the last game of the weekend. From the first game to the last, again, the XFL evolved in their production quality and how many live mics you had and things that us, the viewer, got to see at home. They really fine-tuned it. But I heard him commanding that team. I like the fact that their offense, their calls seem to be a hell of a lot quicker, a hell of a lot smaller, and they got it out quickly. And almost, I guess you could say, equating to the no huddle that you would see in the NFL. But I thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, hell, you don't have time for a huddle in the XFL with a 25-second play clock. But I mean, for a huddle. But man, this kid, he's special. Now, I don't want to start tooting his horn just yet. I'm just saying, if I had to judge off this weekend and this weekend alone, those are my 3 picks for the 3 finalists of MVP so far. With honorable mentions in other places that we won't get into for time reasons. But man, the kid played his ass off. He really did. He came through when it mattered. And like I said again, he only had 1 touchdown versus Nelson, who had no touchdowns, but he did throw a pick. So Talmud, quarterback rating of 108.4 versus 77.5 for Nelson. So you take that for what it's worth. You really got to be impressed with this kid.
Here's 2 things that I'm going to point out as far as this game here goes. And it goes back to what we were just saying about the other 3. St. Louis came in and they played Bob Stoops football. They came in, was quick on the calls, quick on the release. They played Big 12 football, where it's air the ball down the field and score quick. They also were the only team in the league that actually ran the freaking ball. They had 2 people, including the quarterback, almost break 100 yards rushing, which is impressive in and of itself.
Right.
But the takeaway that I'm going to get to here, and yes, it's me being an irritated, salty Dallas fan because of my allegiance to Bob Stoops, Landry Jones, and Jeff Badette. Landry was injured, didn't play. Huge factor. Badette, 3 receptions for 6 yards. Inexcusable. This kid that we had at quarterback, this Nelson, he's an arena footballer. He has, very little collegiate experience. And the one thing that I will say bad about my coach, Bob Stoops, is this guy does not know how to coach a defense to save his life.
Now, I can't argue with you there, but I will agree with you 100% on the quarterback situation for Dallas. I will agree 100%. And not only that, Dallas did have a chance at the end of this game to make a comeback. But your boy, was it Nelson?
Yep.
Threw a pick. I mean, I understand. I can only imagine. And who am I, to say this? But again, here I am. It's our job to talk about the game. And I'm going to call it like I see it. I don't know if it was nerves or what it was, but crunch time was on. There was less than 30 seconds to go in the game. And in the XFL, that means a hell of a lot more than it does in the NFL, because you have, that 5 seconds from when the ball's spotted, the play clock starts before the game clock starts running, which I think is pretty cool once you get a hang of it and get to watching and realize what the hell's going on, because you're so used to the NFL. But he threw a pick, and, I mean, at that point, it was a wrap. But, here's the thing. Again, let me reiterate. We talked about the importance of red zone percentage, successful red zone, trips. And we also talked about the importance of running the football. So let me shed this on you real quick. 191 rushing yards for the BattleHawks versus 58 of the Renegades.
Yeah.
And he also 2 out of 3, 67% in the red zone for the BattleHawks, 0 for 2. A big goose egg percentage-wise for the Renegades in the red zone. That's what happened. That's how the BattleHawks walked out, the underdogs defeating the Dallas Renegades, which, by the way, the Renegades were the only home team this weekend to lose. And that's how they lost. So hopefully, Mr. Stoops and the rest of his team, including the Godfather, go back to the drawing board. And I truly believe, honest to God, next week with Landry, things are they're going to start looking up for Dallas. They really are going to look up for Dallas. And I think next weekend may be one of those weekends, unlike the NFL, because it's rare, to be completely honest, anymore. But you know what they say, any given Sunday, XFL, it's any given Saturday or Sunday. But, hey, man, it all depends on who shows up to play. My personal opinion is that next weekend the nerves are gone. Other than the other 4 teams, I'm not sure what exact the schedules are, but the other teams who haven't played at home will get the chance to do so this game or next game. But I think next weekend the bugs are out. The XFL has seen Oliver, Vince, they've all seen what works, what didn't work. And I believe next weekend is going to be explosive. I think it's going to be a hell of a lot more seamless and smooth. And I think it's going to be a hell of a fun time for American football fans to watch professional football outside of the National Football League.
Next week, and we will be back next week.
Absolutely.
Saturday, 2 o'clock on ABC, we'll be having the Guardians versus the Defenders. Saturday, 5 o'clock on Fox, you're going to have the Tampa Bay Vipers taking on the Seattle Dragons. Sunday on ABC at 3 o'clock, you're going to have the Renegades versus the Wildcats. And the 6 o'clock game over on FS1 is going to be St. Louis versus Houston. 2 of the most explosive offensive teams taking on each other in week 2. It's going to be a pretty exciting game.
Oh, shit. So, okay. I guess DC will be playing at home again, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, well,
That's pretty much a home game for both of them anyway, New York and DC. So
I'm going to go ahead and pick my game of the week for next week for week 2, Saturday at 2:00. The Guardians at the Defenders. That game right there. Um, in my mind, you got a guy who can run, who's smart, who's athletic as hell, and Cordell Jones, and you got Matt. Oh man, McGloin with the Guardians. Man, I'm telling you, if I had to pick a big game next week, that's going to be the game. And I'm also looking over here. I think that let's go ahead and call it now. Who do you have winning these 4 games?
I'm going to go with DC over the Guardians. I'm going to go with the Dragons over the Vipers. Of course, regardless, my Renegades are going to freaking destroy the Wildcats. Man, that Seattle or that St. Louis and Houston game, that's going to be a coin flip. I'm gonna go with Houston on this one, but it's not going to be by much. That one right there, we may see our very first overtime game in the XFL.
So you have DC, the Dragons. You got the Dragons. You got Dallas and Houston. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I've got DC and the Guardians going into the first ever overtime of the XFL. You heard that correctly, with DC winning. I've got shit. I'm gonna call it now. I got the Vipers taking out the Dragons.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think there's going to be hell to pay this week. I'm gonna give you. I don't know, man. The way Dallas played today.
Landry Jones will be back next week.
That's true. He's the wild card. I'm gonna give it to Dallas just because of Landry. Don't let me down, Landry. Then we have, and then I'm gonna say with the Battlehawks and the Roughnecks.
There.
You know what? I'm gonna go with St. Louis. I got to go with St. Louis. I have a feeling about that game, and I'm gonna tell you, if I'm being completely honest, I think the Dallas Wildcats game has a real good possibility of going into overtime as well.
Yeah. I'm gonna say something too. New York and DC. I have a feeling that one right there is gonna max out some attendance records. We were talking about 3.3 million and peaked out at 4. Attendance actually turned out pretty good, but for these 4 games, we were averaging 17.5 thousand in attendance.
Yeah.
I know people are sitting, a bunch of NFL people. Oh, well, it was a stadium for 82,000 people. Yeah, but again, this is brand new, week 1 of a concept that has already failed once. To be able to put 17,500 people in a seat for the first week ever, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure that they're beating the Miami Dolphins attendance at this point.
Let me tell you something. I am absolutely positive that that's a damn victory in anybody's eyes. I'm gonna just call it for what it is. I'm impressed. Haystacks, I'm impressed. I'm truly impressed, not only with the turnout, I think it's going to get better. Merchandise, from what I understand, 40 to 50 people deep standing in the merchandise line to buy shit before the games. In every dream that starts up, there is you put yourself out there and you wait to see what's going to happen. And the XFL already knows what happened the last time. They know what did not work. Vince knows what did not work. This time, my friend, I think they got it right. Hey.
I absolutely agree. Up to this point. Now, mind you, the first go round, they started off okay, and as ratings slipped, they tried to go more outrageous to try to pull people back. But I think this right here, with all the nonsense going on with the NFL, I think it's time that people really want a change and they want an alternative to NFL and collegiate football.
I do.
Vince McMahon saw how and where the AAF failed, and he went a completely opposite route. He was brilliant in that. He waited that year to see what they did and watch what they did and where they failed, and use them as his gopher.
Hey, the best focus group in the world is another organization that tries and fails, right?
Absolutely.
So, hey, pick up where they left off. Not that the AAF did anything wrong. They just didn't have their finances in order. They didn't pre-plan enough. The XFL has spent 2 solid years not only developing the game, innovating the game, medical personnel, benefits, help, focused on what Americans want to see. And I know, Scotty, I've talked to you about it. I'm a member of FAN, the focus group or whatever for the XFL. Also a member of the Play XFL. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get the XFL app. Ladies and gentlemen, check out Play XFL. It's a hell of a lot easier, a hell of a lot more fun than fantasy football for me personally. And now that you have a chance to win $500,000, and not only that, you have a chance to win, even if you're out of the jackpot. Like, unfortunately, I'm not in the jackpot anymore because I didn't get the scores right today. But you have a chance to win every weekend, real cash, real money, and it's easy. All you have to do is throw down the scores for these games. They'll give you select games. You pick the scores for the games that you think, 17-14, 33-16, whatever you got. And if you hit those scores dead on for those games that they give you to pick from, then hey, you're going to be a little richer. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and it's free to play. So why the hell not?
Absolutely. One point that I do want to make before we head right off into the sunset, we were talking about attendance. Los Angeles Chargers in the NFL. Been around for a while. Even though they were San Diego at one time, they're now Los Angeles. 2019, their average, 31,750 people. So the XFL week 1 is averaging exactly 50% of a team that's been around for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. And
Scary.
I have a feeling by midpoint of this season, by game 6, by the weekend of games, week 6, man, I'm just telling you, I've already been to the shop. I've already checked it out. They got the real deal Holyfield. Everything that you can see them playing with on the field, they have for sale. They also have replicas. Even the replicas have the NFL beat. You can get a replica jersey for $75 versus the NFL's $100. You get the real deal on-field jerseys for $225. Yes, I know it's steep, but it's what they wear on the field. Game balls, all that shit. So make sure you check out xflshop.com. And we do not get paid for saying that, plugging that. Just believe in the XFL, because damn it, we believe in American football. And
Yes.
It's time to see it again. It's time to have some damn fun. Enough with the flags, enough with the whistles, enough with the political bullshit.
Yeah.
10-4. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, It's
Don't
been
forget
the point.
questions, comments, concerns. You want to complain and cry and bitch and complain about me talking about millennials and Princeton that suck. Email us. The point is what? At gmail.com.
Bottom of your screen.
Right here, live. And I will answer. If I can't answer, I'm sure Rick, the stat man, can. If you guys want to come on here, you want to come on live with us, let us know. We'll bring you on. We'll have a discussion about football, baseball, basketball, hockey, NASCAR with the Daytona 500 coming up next week, baby. Let us know. We'll put your questions on here and answer them. I'll be the NASCAR guy, I guess, even though the guy that lives 4 minutes from DEI doesn't watch NASCAR.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're all out of time. All joking aside, ladies and gentlemen, like my man Haystacks said, at the bottom of your screen, pointiswhat@gmail.com. If you have any questions, you want to be a guest on the show, hey, respectfully, act like a grown-up. Send us an email. Tell us what you want to bitch about, complain about, argue about, or brag about, XFL or otherwise. Keep it kosher. Keep it cool. Hit us up. We'll get back to you as soon as we can because we're busy as hell. But ladies and gentlemen, again, it's been The Point. It's the debut episode. It went down. Haystacks. Love you, brother. Next time, next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, keep it rocking. Keep it rolling. It's your boy. We're out.
Thank you for watching The Point.